As everyone knows who has seen my blog or my videos, I am in a constant tug of war with my closest peers and friends, trying to persuade you to look at the evidence and scrutinize it in an informed way. My father knew Eisenhower. I knew my father. I speak only for myself. However, I did receive a call from him one morning after the Pittsburgh Post Gazette printed one of my social political editorials, and he told me that he was agreeing with every word and was delighted but shocked to see my name at the bottom when he was finished. His fifth wife, Lynn, with whom I lived with them for a while, used to say that my writing and my idealism was better than me as a person. And that's probably true at that age, seeing as how confused, mixed up, misdirected I was by the British prog rock artists who had attacked me blindside, covered it up, and were using my disability to establish dominion over a rival they hated and feared without knowing. This was in the days before we knew that I had been targeted for apparent significance by people who had it in for Eisenhower and Kennedy. So we know that those who killed JFK and removed his social philosophy, killed his brother, believe that death has established dominion in the United States of America. I would like to say that there are people who have always turned to the United States for leadership and social democracy. However, the world is on the brink of voting no confidence in the matter. There may be very serious political crimes that took place as a result of the Syrian government. But we also know that Iran and Syria were both democratizing forces. Iranian's parliament was a democratizing force over Russia and helped broker some degree of peace in the Chechnya issue because of their influence over traditional democratic blocs of Muslims in Russia. And I remember that when the Berlin Wall came down, and I was flummoxed that Bush could say nothing romantic in its cause. John Tower, I was living in Montana. I was about to hear from Martha Gellhorn. John Tower was sitting in a laundromat, was saying that the ever more menacing, ever more deceitful Soviet Union was going to be even worse. We've been asking them for years as a symbol of their humanity. And Glasnost and Perestroika under Gorbachev, the wall was broken and looked like the world was opening up. There was a woman who handed me a piece of the moon rock in a Greyhound station on my way to Montana. A piece of the Berlin Wall. It was like a moon rock. It was wonderful. So the power structure in the United States of America doesn't give a hoot about democracy. Seeing Russian democracy makes them feel challenged, makes them feel like there's something up ever more menacing, is what he said. So this is the climate in which the operation that I have looked into most, which is the discovery of the Texas school book at a satellite area of WQED where Mr. Rogers was. The Texas school book, you don't know, contained all the information showing that Donald Trump was in on the hit on JFK and had designed it so that it is exactly what it is, which is a myriad of details, almost like a crystalline fortress of wonders in the macabre science of British fascist encoding. And this document, not the U.S. Constitution, since the age of Reagan, has been the governing document of the Fourth Reich in America. Person who deals with them intimately through their hidden man method, where somebody impinges on you, as Greg Carl would put it, sees skyscraper movements. When I put out an article called Bull in the Political Abyss, Clinton conjured up Al Gore the bull in the political abyss, and this plays out in the shadows of the prey. And the reason why I didn't know is because I didn't know that I had and was the object of their Texas school book, the subversion of the Constitution that has been institutionalized with Amy Barrett. So what we need to look at to see that they were degrading the Playboy image when they shot JFK is the wonderful world of Disney, Pentagon Disney in the matter, and the skyscraper movements. The person who's best equipped to move skyscrapers, of course, is Donald Trump. And I don't need to exasperate you with things you already know about my writing, but my chief antagonist, the woman leading the queers who are assassinating Cersei and Kennedy in the name of the Green Party and Soviets, involvement with Oliver Stone and Cyril Wecht at WQED where Mr. Rogers was, and this all played out. It's so complicated I almost forget where I was leading with where I came in with these assassination signatures. Well, I'm not going to restart the video to try to. I'm working from notes, and I guess I was exasperating you with the things you already know, and I forgot my train of thought. But it was about Diagolis. It's coming back now. She's standing outside the World Trade Center with her stiletto, right? They're the ones behind 911. Cameron Brown came to Carnegie Mellon University for the New York Times, and Trump and his minions scrawled stonecutters, CREARE for CREARE, for creative, right? CREARE, that's what they used to always call me, Jimmy CREARE. So the skyscraper movement method, I've told you this before. I've tried to explain this to you. A woman who was a namesake of Di, who was all indexed into the system of Cliff Robertson, who played JFK in PT 109, who starred in the opening premiere episode of The Outer Limits, which was postponed for his funeral, and who went in a private plane above the World Trade Center. This namesake of Diagolis called me on December 8, 1980. That's not possible. The New York Times, unless they knew already, Diagolis in 1979 was in immunogenetics, but you have flocks and flocks of Seattle queers murdering people like Cersei to avenge Diagolis. Why? Because she stood up for them in the AIDS attack. What? Warhol was behind this. He was a friend of Donald Trump. Okay, Warhol was in on this script. It's a catastrophic ruse from the Beatles. Now, not everybody who ever knew me went along with what Paul McCartney mandated about Leslie Katz. Mandate. You will never surmount that you were jealous at Leslie at a time when John Lennon needed you. Okay, that's how that's the Third Reich's entire Quisling war chain. Okay, that's the entire, and not everybody who knew me bought that. They attacked me because of the Playboy, right? Back in the days when Tommy Couture slaughteringly attacked me and shot Dean Tierno dead. DT came out on, Acknowledgement to DT came out on Starless and Bible Black, a lucid image of death and darkness. And DT was shot over Norma Jeanne. And at this time, Beth Blumenfeld had Migliosi all over me, and he would garble his speech, blowing effect of hearing. Migliosi is like Dimaggio. It's like Bugliosi. And they used to have bags and bags full of Kennedy hats at the Babyland where someone was shot dead, where my heart doctor who is suspected of poisoning me, and the chain of Swedish who did poison me, and Harborview who did poison me, and the Mariners' attorneys who did poison me in the heart, causing castration and attacking my Playboy function. These people outside Babyland had a man named Shaky who would say, "I'm going to split your head wide open," at people, and it was all the time going with Migliosi, laughing at him and waving these bags of Kennedy hats outside the Babyland mystery where Mancine used to take me. Brody's father, the doctor from Swedish, has a father who owns a bar there. Okay, this is for real. Okay, this is all symbolic mosaic, and it's authentic, but it's also fraud. They're creating a fraud, a bizarro of themselves to see the skirmish. Ian MacDonald and his buddies Ian Wattenmaker and Penis Sinfield used to always talk about having a rumble. That's the rumble. Okay, so what's the nature of this rumble? The nature of this rumble is never trade human rights for your kin, right? Because kin is a chain of command. It's a nativist block. So you don't want, if you trade human rights for your kin, you will be done in. Now, they killed Roberto Clemente. I'm sure that Donald Trump was in on this. The articles say, in the letters, call me a DERF, which is like Adolf, it's like deaf, and it's Fred spelled backwards, okay? This is for real. Okay, and over by WQED at the Friends Meeting House, there's a building right next door that has swastika tiles. Now, the blacks of WQED will call them sacred African symbols for some God knows reason, but they really will. And so, and then in between these swastikas is the attorney Kirshner, which is a lot like Kushner. Kirshner would make up these stories of people getting into his house while he and his wife were sleeping to collect insurance or something, the way John Shulman would. And he's an attorney who's covering me constantly with weird stuff. I'll get to the show being put on by the Christian aspect of the alliance with Kirshner at WQED here in Seattle, in Tacoma, before I finish this talk. But for now, I want to get back to the fact that Trump killed Clemente. Clemente's museum was put in a firehouse, which is made of the same architectural material as the estate modules at King's Estate, the castle elements, where I was taken gassed as a child. And of course, people like me with long blonde hair were put on houses of the holy. So Living Colors comes in and says, why is the white boy holy? And so you have the British puppet master saying, oh, well, these symbols, you know, when you pluck Circe Kennedy and then pluck the deaf girl for Rosa Clemente, rape her for Clemente Taliban, you are anointing the future divvies in the Fourth Reich for Puerto Rico. And isn't that who Roberto Clemente really represents? And this is what I'm saying when I'm saying not everybody bought into what McCarthy was doing when it came to me. They knew that I would never hurt Rosa, and they knew that these people wouldn't have put Rosa on me in the first place if they thought I would hurt her. But they saw what they were manipulating a neuroplasm they'd implanted. We didn't know it was there. Okay, but it's in there, percolating. And when they would cut off this coitus, the sexual involvement, it would suffocate, and I would start screaming. I was in so much pain. I had seizures. I went to Iowa when they blew up the Oklahoma Federal and the skyscraper movement war game. So you have this situation with me where I'm a topic, but I don't know it, right? So they can manipulate that. And McCartney was manipulating that. He was saying, Fred Rogers says, Leslie Katz was threatened, and that's why we made all these pornographic films on Mount Desert Island and have the queers like Cameron Brown threatening him with injection. And the medium is the message. This is Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message. They were using a virus and they came and did it again. That's plain and simple. I mean, you can hardly argue it. So what we see in the symbolic movement of skyscrapers is inside awareness that they're occupying our historical legacy, our intellectual heritage. And I've told you a lot, and I could stop because you could investigate some of these chains of evidence and link the whole thing together into a social fabric that they are designating like pieces on a Milton Bradley war game board, a sort of stratego operation of symbols and so forth, which are meant to dehumanize. I mean, in America, you go to court if you have something and you accept the verdict. That's processes of evidence, and they're saying, well, we don't buy that. We're too American to buy that. We're too democratic to buy that. They're too Fourth Reich to buy that. Get that through your heads, okay? So you have this situation where all of these people who are so prominent are going along. And in World War II, when they were setting this up, King Edward was schmoozing with people like Cecil B. DeMille to get control of Hollywood. They were setting up, Errol Flynn was living in Laurel Canyon with Houdini, and he sold Hitler on the idea of a Houdini escape, which they did again with John Lennon. So you have this, because they need that. John Lennon died, Leslie Katz was threatened. John Lennon died, Leslie Katz was threatened. And this bypasses. That Dia called me on December 8, 1980, totally short circuits it. Nobody was willing to entertain the truth, because if they entertain the truth, they will be accused of putting human rights before kinship, when in reality what they're doing is putting the American system of government and civil rights before the Fourth Reich. That's what they're doing. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. So when you look at these symbols and you see the way that they operate, they maneuver to make it look like they're doing it in my interest. Like I was castrated and a woman named Sandy Slade shows up in Fitzroy. And then I get word that Sandy died from cancer below the belt, right? Back in Pittsburgh, a different Sandy. Sandy Slade, right? So, and this, you don't want to go there because it short circuits the fact that they put don't know who, and German Green Party on the back of my own father's obituary, right? Okay, so, and we talk about injecting people, which is the essence of the whole issue of Mount Desert Island, where you had a swastika, like that swastika, that sacred African symbol in that building by WQED. Will Zell, what the white Nazi from the immunogenetics labs, defending the holy Jewess of Paul McCartney. Wow, that's creepy. But that's what they did. They built a Fourth Reich of art representations of everybody, and then the Marshall McLuhan message was the medium of what they did. So you have this situation of unseemly pimpery being visited upon me, who was a mark in all of this. And they were denying that I was a mark in all of this when it was obvious that I was a mark in all of this as part of their war on the playboy liberal image. Okay, not everybody bought that there wasn't more than met the eye. And that's been a problem for Ringo Starr, for example, who has, uses his ogre, his notorious fascism as a zany biker mystique of nativism, to kill Circe, so what? To rape Jeannie, so what? Roberto Clemente's name is responsible for that, man. He plucks Roberto Clemente's name and he puts it on Rosa Clemente and says, you have been plucked. That's what it means now. And Roberto wouldn't stand for the rape of a mentally retarded deaf girl who has epilepsy. Why did Cameron ban? Because they didn't inject you. Queer bait. And this is their mentality. This is the skyscraper movement that's at work. So you look at Donald Trump and back and through the lens of his friendship with Warhol, and you see that he who was friends with William Burroughs. There's a lot of William Burroughs style in some of those films from Dealey Plaza. You see that he went to school with Francis Ford Coppola, and as soon as you admit that Hollywood and Sinatra and Reagan, which you have to admit once you've looked at the evidence, were involved in the murder of JFK. It's a simple fact to show that he was in a position. Gail Burstyn was only 12 years old when she wrote the Fourth Reich's Constitution that they've been using. So don't tell me Donald Trump was too young when he was in school with Francis Ford Coppola, the Godfather, right? They have Jack Nicholson breathing down my back. Clint Eastwood is all over this case. You've seen the autograph of the smoking gun he sent me. And the whole idea is to laugh in our faces with what they've done. I mean, they see, like the brainwave sonar that they've developed, as promoting, African fashion development. And this comes from the mind of Penis Gabriel. And the reason why Brian Eno's mind is so heaped in all of this is that he was like the one who conceived of the idea of having really weird resonances and calling it swastika girls. The girls will be girls. Don't you want the swastika girls? And they cancel out the deaf-suck white American who traces to Eisenhower. So you have these symbols, and there's a lot of these symbols, George Romero, his daughter, was named in the script as a sort of an image of a sex-changing reptile of some sort in the script from the Fourth Reich. And he worked with Alfred Hitchcock on North by Northwest. And Boris Karloff lived in Dakota with John Lennon. So, and that creepy woman whose mania controls the bloodline. She gives points to the people, to the black people in the Union who will call the swastika a sacred African symbol. That's worth a 9 spot of Hieronymus. They do the same thing that dialectical UWists give a points to the students who will say that living colors is more important than the U.S. Constitution. The Black Lives Matter is more important than the mission statement of the NAACP. They get points. Okay, the person who's giving these points from the Dakota lived with Boris Karloff. So you have Hitchcock and Karloff. And there is a knighted aristocracy weighing in for the future of British fascism, for the Houdini, Casper, which is the nick they gave to Hitler when he was in Argentina. That's the facts. So Donald Trump was clearly in on all of this. He's the sweat lodge living, behemoth of the whole structure of the wonderful world of Pentagon Disney. And the cheap spaz attack that they inflicted with the neuroplasm to demean the Playboy white sock with a sacred African symbol, man.